I'm certainly grateful that you're all here. You know, as Jeff and me are Terry's only surviving family in Boise, Idaho. So without you, can you imagine how wonderful this service would be? There'd be the two of us, and before we knew it, we'd be done and probably watching a football game or something. But thank you for coming. It really means a lot. We were undecisive whether to have this due to the COVID. You know, this is so awkward, but we just can't let Terry go without some kind of a memorial for her. So we're doing it, but I ask that we remember we know the rules. We know that we're supposed to social distance and wear our masks, and I have things the best we can covered. We've got sanitary wipes, whatever we call them, and let's just do our best to be safe. There's restrooms in the house if you need it. But mainly I want you to know that we're just really glad to have this service in our house. We've never been the formal kind of people, and I know Terry, she'd be great to know that we're doing this. There's no place she would rather have a service than at the house. This is just, I mean, look, there's all the work in the garden, and this was all her deal. The little boxes of sticks that she went around and picked up. She just loved it here and loved it in this backyard. Well, I think we're ready to get started here. Let me get Terry. Hey, Terry, we're ready. Terry, come on, we're ready to go. Terry!
I'm fixing my hair!
Well, come on, we're waiting for you.
Just start without me.
We can't start without you. It's your service.
Okay, I'm coming. I'll be right there.
We're never really late, but we're certainly never early. You know, and this is just how it always was. Anytime we had someplace to go, we'd have this little ongoing battle, and I used to tease her that she just wanted a grand entry. Anytime we'd go someplace, we'd go in together, and I'd go into the room, and she'd go into the bathroom, and she'd come in a couple minutes later, and I'd say, "Here comes Terry with her grand entry." Terry, come on, let's go.
Just go get my glasses and a bottle of water.
I've got some water. I've got your glasses. Let's go.
Okay, I'm ready. Oh, I forgot my phone. Oh, I gotta pee.
Ladies and gentlemen, for one last time, I would be honored and pleased to introduce to you my lovely wife, Terry Gunn, for her final grand entry. I'd like to introduce you to my son, Jeff. And I bet you would come and say a couple of words for us, if you would, please. Thank you, son.
My mom was the most selfless person I ever knew. And she was a prankster. She had all her little quirks. I never understood how someone could get so excited about those little Mentos candies. They cost like 70 cents. They're at the gas station at the end of the road, but to her it was like everything. I always knew that whenever I came over here to my parents' house, not to show up empty-handed, because if I showed up without Mentos candies, she was going to throw a fit. And after like 10 straight years, there's no way that she was actually surprised when I would show up with them and hide them and give them to her and surprise her with them. But she always acted like she was. She always acted like it was a fresh $100 bill. It was so goofy. And she was such a ridiculous jazz fan, obviously. I actually went and bought this little jazz bracelet today. But every other night, she's got her jersey on, and God forbid it's not the same color that the team's wearing that night. There's little earrings and her jazz shoes and the whole deal. I've seen her paint her face. just to sit at home in front of the TV and hoot and holler, and she'd do her little free throw voodoo dance, make him miss the free throws. And she hosted a weekly football pot. It was usually just like 5 or 6 of us, and actually some of you that are here are usually in that football pot. We'd all put in our $5 and we'd make our picks, and honestly, she was so bad at it, she would never ever win. But she was passionate about it, and she was dedicated for as long as I can remember. And that's probably the weirdest thing about this NFL season. It's not the COVID or the kneeling. It's that there's no weekly football pot. And my mom always had jokes. I remember even at the very end, I think it was like her second or third to last day, she was sitting with me and my dad, and I remember she joked, I thought that we both agreed that he was supposed to go first. And then her little raspy giggle, she had the most unique giggle I've ever heard, and I do hope I never forget it. I wish I had a recording of it. But she was so selfless. Like, no matter what she was going through, she was always there for anyone who needed her. And I was always surprised at how many neighborhood friends she had, and it was people you wouldn't expect. She had the elderly woman down the street, and there were some teenage boys across the street, and there was the partiers in the next block, and the religious people across the street, and the really grumpy guy next to them. But I never understood what it was that drew them to her. Like, I don't know what she could have been giving them. Like, what was it, you know? And truth is, it wasn't anything specific. It was just whatever they were missing. Sometimes just an ear, or someone that cares, or giving a purpose. And to be honest, it was the same for me. She could be completely couch ridden, just full of pain, unable to get up, and just in tears. But the minute that I called her and told her that I had a sore throat or rolled my ankle playing sports or something stupid, she was always begging me to come stay here with her so she could get me a blanket or ice or soup or whatever it was. It didn't matter, because she was never her own priority. She just wanted to give everything that she had. And to be honest with you, I wasn't always the best son. Like, every kid gets in trouble, I know that. But for a long time, I just wasn't very nice to her, you know. Sometimes I'd call her names, and there was probably a good decade or so that I refused to tell her that I loved her. And that obviously changed since, but I always had my regrets. And no matter how cruel I was to her, it never fazed her. She always just returned it with a mother's love, because that's who she was. Just a mother to everybody. And speaking of regret, I regret not having kids sooner. Of course, for her sake, but also for my future kids, because she was already such a great mother and grandmother and godmother. And I wish they would have gotten to meet her and hear her unique giggle. But I always knew that I would be such a mess when my mom died. Like, I was so sure of it. Like, how could I possibly go on without her, because I'd be alone in this world. And I'm sure a lot of us have those feelings, like our love with our own parents is special and unlike anybody else's. But what's craziest to me is that for all of us, I'm actually okay. I'm at peace. Like, it's a little awkward because, like, I know when my mom's sister was here the other day, and I've seen some of the people here already, and I know everyone's grieving and they're struggling, and I know everyone grieves in their own way, but I really couldn't have predicted the comfort that I would feel in all this. And I think what it came down to is that I knew my mom was stubborn. Like, she was always going to get her way no matter what. And it was over a decade ago that I remember the doctors told us that she might have a couple years left if she was lucky. If she quit smoking and drinking and was more healthy and more active, and she didn't do any of that. But she defied those odds, because she wasn't going to go until she was dang good and ready. This time, though, talking to her, she just was. She was ready. Ready to be out of pain, ready to be with her parents. Not that she'd given up, but she just was genuinely at peace. When we made the decision to take her home, I remember I prayed for a sign of confirmation. And I knew it was right. It felt right. And I remember when we got home, my dad gave me this little book, his little blue book about death. And it was nice. It had this little poem in it, and it's actually on the back of your guys' back of your invite things. And it's basically what it is. It's just about this ship that when it hits the shoreline, it gets smaller, and it looks like it's going away, and you're never going to see it again. But the ship doesn't get any smaller or less majestic or anything like that. It's just my perspective. And maybe the perspective as it's getting closer is that the ship gets bigger and more exciting. And the way I like to see it is maybe that perspective is my mom's parents, seeing her coming. And so, like I talked about selflessness earlier, my mom, turns out she decided to go on September 18th, which happens to be her own mother's birthday. Like, she chose it herself. And the other thing that book had was it had a detailed list of everything that happens in the process of death. And I was shocked at how accurate that list was. It was right down the line. It was, most importantly, it described the final days right before death, what happens, and that she would have a sudden burst of energy after not wanting to see anyone or do anything. Then she would have this burst where she would just want to see everyone and sit around and talk. And I remember that. I remember that she was coherent and active, and she wanted to talk to us. And for her, it was her first night back from the hospital. I brought her her favorite meal. It was Chick-fil-A. And I remember she didn't want it. Just like the book said she wouldn't want it. Somehow that book knew how stubborn she was. But also, like the book, she was active, and I was able to have my final conversation with her. A conversation that you could only hope to dream of having as the last conversation. And most of that I want to keep private, but I did ask her if we had made the right decision for her. And like I said, she was just ready. There was no fear in her eyes. And to this moment, I can't even fathom that. But maybe it was losing her mom recently, or maybe she had secretly done some praying of her own. Maybe she was just putting on a brave face for us. But still, she was ready, and that made me ready, and it put all of us at peace. And one last time, she gave me and everyone else exactly what we needed. So, thank you, Mom.
About 15 years ago, I remember getting ready to go to work. Got out of the shower. I went into my bedroom, went over to my chest of drawers, and opened my drawers, grabbed my underwear, went and put them on, and this thing fell out. What the heck? And I looked down. It's a big old rubber spider, about this big. And I said, that little stinker. You know, two of us could play this game. So I took that spider, and she was in the other room, and I went in the kitchen, and I went into those cupboards, and there was the plates, and over here was the cereal bowls, and I thought that'd be great. There's 5 or 6 of them, so I went down about 2 or 3 and stuck it up in there, and just went back, and a couple of days later, I found your spider, you know, and I great, and so, you know, a month later, I'm getting ready to go to work, and get out of the shower, and go get in my drawers, and I pull out a pair of socks, and open the socks, and there's this spider. Well, there's 15, 20 pairs of socks in there. It'd been that many days, and she was willing to wait till I got to the right pair of socks, and I pulled this spider out, and I thought, well, dang it to heck. And I saw her bathrobe there, so I stuck this spider in her bathroom pocket, her bathrobe pocket. And this went on. This went on until just recently. You know, I'd go hunting or fishing or go out of town on business, and I'd open up my suitcase, and if I was with friends in a motel room, I'd open up, and there'd be that spider, and they'd laugh, and they'd say, there's Stan's spider. But, you know, I'd also find a lot of notes and letters, you know, in my lunch when I go to work, or in that same suitcase, you know, oh, honey, be safe, you know, I wish you come home safe, I love you, and, you know, it was just so heartfelt, but she always had just a good concern for me, and it was really precious to me. But anyway, back to this spider. Just to shorten it up, when she passed away, this would have been September the 16th, Friday morning. She was laying there, and the mortician was coming to get her, and before they came and got her, I says, I'll be right back. And I went into my bedroom, and I got that spider, and I came over. She was laying there. I put that spider on her chest. I put her one hand over the spider. I put the other hand over the top of that other one and clasped it all nice together. And I gave her a kiss on the cheek, and I says, sure turn to hide the spider. I'll come and get it in no time at all. And they took her away. Well, you know, it was about 2 or 3 days later, and Terry's sister Cindy came to town, and she wanted to go see Terry, and so we decided to go have a viewing. So we went, and the lady there at the funeral home was so nice. Her name was Sarah, and she got it all arranged. So we got there and we went in and we saw Terry laying there, and I kind of stroked the side of her face and told her I loved her and told her that she sure felt cold. And Cindy was there. We had a great time together. But when it came time to go, I just had to look. So I opened up moved the blanket back a little bit, and I looked down and I could see her there, and I could see that one hand was here and one hand was down here. And I thought, well, what the heck is that? Something's wrong. And so I started looking, and looking at her hand right there was a hole right there, and I could see inside there, and I could see that there wasn't a spider there. And I was kind of upset, and I went and found Sarah, and I says, I've got a problem here. I put something precious in her hands, and it's not there, and I want it to be part of her remains, and I would really like to know where it's at. And she came over, and she said, well, that doesn't seem right. And she took the blanket down, and she says, what was it? And as she's saying, what was it? She grabbed her hand, and she lifted it up, and that spider goes flying up in the air. And she goes, ah! And I say, it's a spider. So, you know, she got me one last time with the spider. But I want you to know that Terry lived her life under her terms. And she did whatever she wanted, however she wanted to do it. And whether you liked it or not, she was going to do it anyway, and that's just the way it was, and you just needed to deal with it. I want my toast buttered to the edges, you know, and it was just the way that it was. And I appreciate her for that, because she stood her ground all of her life. And she was quite a feisty girl. You look at that picture. That was Terry. I used to hang around her when I was young just to see what she was going to do next. She was that kind of a girl. She was sometimes somewhat irreverent, sarcastic, but she always smiled and had a lot of fun. And like Jeff said, she always had these funny sayings that she made up. You know, for example, we're watching a football game, and it's the fourth quarter, and it's 2 minutes to go, and it's 3rd and 2 on the 4-yard line. The other team has the ball, and if you're ready to snap, let's get ready to fumble, and there's just 3 or 4 of us sitting there, but that was her, and that was her attitude. But that's just the way she was brought up. She came from such a great family, and her parents were wonderful people, and she has a good family, and she was taught manners and respect, appreciation, and dignity, and hard work, and she lived her life that way. She was an all-around good person. And she was so kind. She was that girl that if somebody cut their finger at our house, whether it be a little kid or whether it be a big guy, she'd insist to get him over to the kitchen table and sit him down, and she'd get that finger and she'd wash it off good, and she'd put Neosporin on it, the Band-Aid on it, and she'd say, there you go, that'll make you feel better. And she was just so kind. She was the kind that loved her pets. And how about her squirrels? Larry, Sally, what can I say? We go up in the mountains and we see deer, or we see elk, we go to the park and we see ducks. Terry was homebound, and that was where she lived. And I just can't tell you how much joy that brought her to sit at her desk in the living room and watch those squirrels climb up that tree and get those peanuts. In her prime, she had squirrels that she could just hold out, and they'd come and take them out of her hand. And I didn't like it either. I had a $25 a month peanut bill. But when Terry was 17, she fell out of the tree. I mean, it was a long fall, too. She probably fell 12 feet, broke her pelvis. And I think that was the beginning of her pains and her back problems. And she never recovered from that. She started getting back pains. And Terry had 3 back surgeries. She had screws in her back and hardware that long, and screws that big around. It was just bolting and holding all this stuff together. She's supposed to have a 4th surgery, but it's just so intrusive. She just wasn't strong enough, and she just couldn't handle that last surgery, so she just put up with it. And she started getting headaches. She always had a headache. And I'd say, how's your headache today? She'd say, oh, it's not bad, but it was always there. She got older, I could see her fingers and her toes starting to arthritic up a little bit. And she's, and she was struggling. Every time I'd see her, I'd say, "Hey, how you doing?" "I'm okay." And the only time I saw her express pain is when she was asleep. She'd be asleep on the couch and she'd roll over and I'd see her go, "Ugh." But when she was awake, she wouldn't show that. She was just too proud, and she would not let her pain control her life. But that's the reason she was a homebody. She never went anywhere because she couldn't. If we drove out to Meridian, even the doctors, we go to those humps going down Sunrise Rim, and we'd have to slow right down so we could creep over them. But driving and making that turn, by the time we got back from Meridian, it'd take her 2 days to recover. So that's why she was home. But she wasn't just laying around. She was a busy gal. She read a lot of books. She read 3 books a month. She did probably 100 jigsaw puzzles out in that garage. Summer, winter, and night. She'd go out there and she'd sit out there for 3-4 hours at a time at night and just put puzzles together. And her plants. What do I need to say about her plants? If you've been in our house, you know how wonderful her plants are. But she was also a busybody, I'd be sitting there watching TV and I could hear her cleaning in the kitchen. "What are you doing, Tara?" And she'd say, "Just puttering." And I'd go look and see what she was doing, and she was polishing the toaster or cleaning the can opener or scraping all the gunk out of the cracks between the stove or between. We had such an immaculate, beautiful house. There was never a dish in the sink. It was always clean and put away. The counters were always spotless. She just kept such a nice home. I was really fortunate for that. But she had such a strong will to conquer these challenges she was getting. And these have gone on for a long time. I remember even 4 or 5 years ago, she was struggling, and we were struggling. We were powerless against the issues in our life, and our lives had become unmanageable. And we were stuck. We were in a rut. We could not live our lives. And that's when I went and started to pray, and I found my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and our Heavenly Father, and I had been religious in the church, and I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and since I've been doing that, things have changed for me, for the better. And I don't know how I would have ever been able to get through these things had I been powerless and unmanageable. I just don't know how it could have happened. But to prove this, I want y'all to know that we had an angel come and see us. And this angel was named Katie. And we were sitting there, I was getting ready to go to work one day, and there was a knock at the door. And I go and look at the door, and I said, "Oh, Katie, hi, Katie." And I hear Terry say, "Katie." And he says, "Yeah, Katie's here." And she came in, "Oh, hey, Katie, how you doing? I've been trying to get a hold of you. You've been gone for so many hours. You haven't had a phone number, blah, 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 blah." And she says, "Well, I'm in town. I came to see my family, and I'm going to be here for a couple of weeks, and I wanted to stop by and see you. And I see you're not doing very well, but I just wanted to say hi, and I'll come and see you tomorrow. I'll be here for a couple of weeks." So the next day, knock on the door, and there's Katie. "Oh, hey, can I make you some cereal? Are you doing okay?" And okay, blah, blah, blah. And the next day, "I'll come and watch The Price is Right with you." And she stayed all day. And this is working pretty good for me. I said, "Well, geez, I'm just going to go to work." So I left and went to work and kept them together. Got back, and I said, this is a pretty good deal. It's September, early September, and I got an elk tag. I'd kind of like to go elk hunting. So I grabbed Braxton here, and I said, "Terry, I'd like to go elk hunting. What do you think?" "Oh, you need to go. You need to take a break. Go up there for a couple of days. It'll do you good." So, okay, so up I went, and I went elk hunting, and I came back, and there was Katie, and there was Terry. Katie had moved in and was staying with us full time, so she could take care of her while I was gone hunting. And there was Terry. The house was clean, and Terry's hair was done nice. In fact, her hair was washed, and the counters, everything was clean. It was great. And I thought, well, that's good. So went to work the next day, and came back, went to work the next day, and Terry was hair was done, the house was clean. It's a pretty good deal. Maybe I ought to go hunting. So I says, hey, dear, what do you think? I'm going to go hunting. And she says, oh, yeah, you need to go. You just go relax, get out of here. You need to take a break. So went up, came back 3-4 days later, and the house was clean, and Terry's hair was washed and nice, and everything was good, except Terry wasn't good. She had a little bit of shake, and she was a little bit slower to talk, and I knew something was wrong. And they said, yeah, she's fallen a couple of times, and so that's when we started to get nervous and worried. I took Katie off to the side, and I says, Katie, we've got a problem. You know that this is coming to an end, and I'm wondering if you'd be able to stay the duration and take care of her until she's gone. She says, Stan, I'd be honored to. So she stayed, and it wasn't more than 2 or 3 days. Went to bed, and about, 5 in the morning, knocked at my door. Hello, what is it? Stan, Terry's not okay. So I jumped up, got dressed, came running out there, and Terry says, unresponsive. We called the paramedics. Paramedics came and got her. Took her to the emergency. I called Jeff, told him what had happened, and Jeff went that way, I went that way, and we met at the emergency room. And we says, yeah, we're here to see Terry. And she said, well, we have a COVID policy, so only one of you can go in. We said, well, we're going in. And we didn't accept that. And they finally got the doctor to let us both go in. So we went in, and they says, doctor, how's she doing? He says, that she's a pretty sick girl. She's got her pneumonia back, and she's just really weak and really sick. And I says, well, what can we do for it? He says, well, I really think the only thing we can do is we can intubate her, put the hose back down her throat. We can put the IV in her neck. It's uncomfortable and painful and intrusive, but that's where it has to go. She just doesn't have enough. We need to put that many fluids down her, and that's the only place it'll really take it. And I thought, oh man, I know that she has a living will and she doesn't want to be kept alive. Is this a procedure to keep her alive, or is this a procedure that she can put on while she gets healthy and gets better? And he says, I don't know, I'll have to leave that up to you. So, like Jeff said, the doctor left, and we decided that we'd have a prayer. So Jeff and I said a prayer. And after that prayer, we immediately looked at each other and at exactly the same time said, let's load her up and let's get home. We're wasting time. So we told the doctor when the doctor came in, we wanted to go home. And so he says, fine, I'll call the hospice. He called hospice, arranged hospice to come to the house. So this was Wednesday around noon, Wednesday the 16th. Hospice got here, and Katie was here waiting, and so Katie let the hospice in, and they set the hospital bed up, and they brought another oxygen concentrator and hooked it together so she had enough oxygen to where she could stay. And about 4 o'clock, Terry made it home. And when Terry got home, we put her in the hospital bed, and she was there and she was comfortable. 4 o'clock, Wednesday the 16th of September. Well, that's when Jeff had his talk with her, and that's when I had my talk with her, and she knew what was in store for her, and she was at ease with it. She went to sleep, and we let her sleep, and Katie slept on the couch next to her. I went into bed. Next morning, Thursday came around. I came in, and Terry was there, and I said, good morning, Terry, and she kind of opened her eyes, and she kind of gave me a smile, but with hospice also comes the medications, and she wasn't as alert and wasn't as spunky. So we just let it go, and by Thursday night, she was just sleeping. So come about midnight, Thursday night, I decided that I would go in there, and I said a prayer. I gave her what I called to be a husband's priesthood blessing. And after that blessing, I went into bed, went to sleep. About 4 in the morning, Katie's there, knocking at the door. Stan, she's gone. So I get up about 4 in the morning, I put on my clothes and run out there, and there's Terry laying there as peacefully as could be. And, bottom line, what the story is Terry lasted in our living room for 36 hours. Not 3 to 6 weeks or not 3 to 6 months. She was there 36 hours and she was gone. She died in her sleep. For heaven's sakes, how wonderful is that? Katie was there by herself. Well, Friday morning. So by 6 o'clock Friday night, Katie packed up. She was on her way back to Minnesota. I don't know if I told you, but she lived in Minnesota. She left and she went back to Minnesota, and I haven't seen or heard from her since. So you tell me that wasn't an angel that got there then and left then. You tell me that that was a coincidence, and I say it wasn't. I say that was my prayers being answered. And I'm so grateful to Katie, and I'm grateful to hospice for the way that this transpired, that it was just truly a blessing. So that's my testimony. And I'm so grateful to what happened, and I'm grateful to Terry, and I love her so much. And I appreciate all of you too, and thank you for coming. We got so many phone calls and texts and sympathy cards and flowers and meals at the door. You've really helped us make us through this, and thank you so much. I'll leave it at that, and I'll say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.